So I've had access to Pacific Drive for a little while now, and I've cemented my feelings about it after playing it for quite a few extended sessions. I haven't quite beat the game, but I've got a fair amount of hours in it, enough to get a real grasp on how I feel about its systems, its mechanics, and a lot going on in this wonderful but terrifying driving horror game. Pacific Drive is a game where you take control of a person sucked into a quarantine zone with various stalker-like anomalies plaguing it, where you get paired with a car as your mode of transport around the zone, and essentially you've got to find out the mystery of why you've been stuck with this car and how you're eventually going to get out, while interacting with a couple of other characters who help you along the way. The most obvious place to start here is the visual style of Pacific Drive, which I happen to absolutely love. It's around the borderline of low poly, but it's not quite to the point where there's no detail on any of the models, as quite a few of them, namely a lot of the stuff in the car and the engine, and the interior of the car you're driving especially, look pretty incredible. But it certainly isn't going for a realistic art style, but that doesn't hinder the game's attempts at being scary or immersive at all. I do find that the visual style actually upholds Pacific Drive a fair bit and enhances a lot of the scares it throws your way. It uses contrast and lighting to its advantage to get you properly scared and guessing at what's going to be in the shadows waiting for you, and to create various weather effects like storms to really enhance the feeling of dread and the atmosphere of the game, which is probably my favourite part of it in terms of immersion and visuals. However, there is a fair bit going on at certain times on screen, involving various anomalies that you encounter and different physics objects interacting with each other, and this can lead to some frame drops. I was playing on medium on a 6700 XT. For reference point on other AAA games like Halo Infinite or The Last of Us Part 1 Remake, I'm sitting about 90 to 100 FPS on high. Here on Pacific Drive, I was sitting around 80 FPS on medium. I could bump it up to high, but then I'd drop down to maybe 60 FPS, which is perfectly playable. I just like playing on a slightly higher FPS than that. So the performance here is decent, but it definitely had its hitches, especially when encountering certain physics objects for the first time, like harvesting the plasma material that you find. There's a great animation of breaking the housing that the plasma's in, and it shatters into glass. Had a couple hitches the first time that happened, but after that, it does smoothen out. So in terms of performance and frame rate, it's okay, but honestly, it was nowhere near bad enough to put me off, and it was perfectly acceptable. But if you're on a lower end rig, you'll probably be fine on low, and because the way the game is stylized, that'll be okay. But if you're looking for a very optimized game, it's not quite there yet. At least the build I was playing on wasn't. However, let's talk about the stuff you'll actually be doing in the game, namely scavenging and surviving, heading into the zone on various routes to grab items, and opening up a portal to get back home when you're done. This loop captures what makes games like Helldivers 2, Lethal Company, and Deep Rock Galactic so fun and tense, and that is that it gives you boundaries for how you're meant to get out. Similar to those games, you've got to extract from the zone, as you can't just follow the path you came in on. Once you're done scavenging and taking apart other cars and raiding houses, you'll have to find energy to open a portal to get back home, and once you do open that portal, you'll be on a time limit to race to it as fast as possible, before the zone closes in and destroys you. The harsh visuals here, combined with some great sound design, make this loop at the end of each run terrifying, and it's the same feeling I get when I'm jumping into the pod at the end of Helldivers 2, or escaping a Lethal Company, for example. The items that you actually scavenge using my favourite tool in the whole game, the Scrapper, which is so satisfying to tear apart other cars and other items out in the zone. Each of these items are used for upgrading your car and the base that you're in. Now let's tackle the base that you're in first. There are various stations to customize and build around the little garage that you're centered in, and the garage itself is littered with detail. It feels lived in, there's tools everywhere, and you can tell that one of the characters that you meet, over the radio at least, has been living here. It doesn't feel artificial or sterile. They've done a great job at designing the home base that you're stuck, customizing your car, and fixing up and planning your routes in Pacific Drive. Now, upgrading your items and your car comes in various forms. You can head to your classic upgrade tree, which you upgrade by getting this plasma energy out on your runs, to unlock different tools and parts for your car, and then you'll head over to the workstation to actually make them using the resources and materials you found out on your runs. There's a lot of menus here. It can feel quite clunky at times, but once you get used to it, honestly, it's really not that bad, and it helps that the UI design is very grounded in the aesthetic of the game, so every menu feels like it belongs, and nothing feels a step out of place. It's great. But if you're not used to these thorough menus, like I initially wasn't, it'll be a bit of a shock to you, but after that, you'll be fine. I think my last note on the actual gameplay loop is talking about the size of the zones that you're in, because it's not one continuous road. You do actually drive out your garage after selecting your route, but there are loading screens between essentially small sections of towns or roads, and they're not that big. The speed of your car at the start of the game is quite slow, so they feel very fast, but to be honest, I could do with them being a little bit bigger maybe. But to be honest, if you're looking for a game that's really going to simulate road trips, this isn't quite it, because each of the areas you're locked to are various small areas around the zone, as I said, with loading screens in between. Now, the story is about getting home, as I stated before, and to do this, you are tasked with various missions, and characters give you these missions. They speak to you over the radio, and this might put some people off who are looking for a real quiet, atmospheric experience. But after the first few missions, they do shut up a bit more and let you kind of just get on with it, and only pipe up when they're giving you more story exposition or giving you your next mission. So these were nowhere near as intrusive or annoying as I was worried that they might be at the start of the game, so thumbs up there. Speaking of ambience and sound design, it's great here. The sound design of the zone is unnerving and really makes you feel like you're in a place where you're not supposed to be. You hear distant anomalies and very, very close anomalies giving off noises that go echoing throughout the trees, and the devs have even nailed the sound of just the tires creeping through the forest, which if you've ever been on a late drive with the windows down, you'll know exactly what I mean. It's quite a spooky noise, and it's clear they've sampled some great audio to really get you in the mood and the ambience of the game, so thumbs up from me there. I absolutely love me some good sound design, and it's incredible here. What's also incredibly terrifying are the enemies. Each of them, like much of the stuff in the game, can be scanned to give you more info, and before each run you're warned of what anomalies could be awaiting you in certain areas of your road trip. They have terrifying sound design, they can pop up out of nowhere and scare the shit out of you, and each of them are creatively designed. These aren't just floating orbs, although you do have, you know, your fair few floating orbs if you like that sort of thing, which I do, but there are genuinely a couple of really well designed enemies throughout this game. Like spinning saws that run along the ground and try and tear up your car, to floating mishmashes of metal that stick suction cups onto your car and try and drag you away from your destination. You get a sinking feeling of dread every time you see an anomaly, and avoiding them is your primary goal at all costs when you see one. Each of them fit in art style and tone to the zone, and none of them feel out of place in this setting. And they all leave you wondering what terrible disaster could have happened to leave the area looking like this, inhabited by these anomalies. So after a good few hours of Pacific Drive, those are my thoughts. I don't want to spoil too much in terms of story and what you're going to actually encounter in the game, because there genuinely is so much good stuff here, and I've really enjoyed playing it, and I will enjoy playing it further as I progress more throughout the game. In conclusion, they nailed the premise, the upgrades feel rewarding, the story is engaging, and the gameplay loop is tense and everything that I wanted it to be, despite some little performance issues and the map size not being maybe as large as I wanted without the loading screens. Anyway, thank you all for watching. Are you going to get Pacific Drive? Are you looking forward to it? If you're new to the channel or have been supporting it for a while, we just got the Patreon and members set up. So if you want to head over to the Patreon, the link is in the description, and the members are on the channel page and by the subscribe button. No obligation to do that, but I know some people didn't realize that was a thing just yet. And I also want to say thank you to our first ever patron / member / hero for the channel, Luke Bentley. You know who you are. Every little helps with supporting the channel and getting these videos out there, and support like this lets me do that. So thank you, Luke Bentley, our first ever patron. So thank you all for watching. Thank you for supporting if you do, and I hope to see you all in the next video.